Hey, it's UPB from OptionMillionaires.com. How's everyone doing? I'm going to do a recap of today's action. Look at Netflix, all right? I was talking about Netflix. I was in the chat room. See, I was bumping up against this line. This line goes farther back. Let me just pull back from a longer time frame so you can see what I was talking about. See this line here? So I was expecting a possible pullback here. I was talking about it in the chat room. Jimmy Bob, who knows Netflix inside and out, and who was one of the few people when it was in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, continually calling for upside, was behind it. I was actually calling for a dip. I got into the puts, and luckily for me, it got out for a big loss, but nonetheless, not a complete loss if I had held up to here, but it was a nice move for Netflix. These option contracts for Netflix were on the watch list. They're on the watch list today. Look at the 250s and the 255s, namely. These were on the watch list at OptionMillionaires.com. Jimmy Bob does a watch list every morning. These options have grown significantly in price. Wow. Look at the chart. It pretty much tells the story itself. They were as low as 5 cents just before the 4th of July. Hit as high as 165.50. That's what they closed at. No, the high was 167. They closed at 165.5, so down just a hair from its highs. Just a beautiful move. Jimmy Bob knows Netflix like the back of his hand, and significant money was made here on the calls. He was pointing them out yesterday in the chat room on audio, and that's what it's all about when you're trading stock options. Getting into the big move before it happens. Look at Netflix. I mean, just a really tremendous move, and you can see how this resistance line actually it almost acted as a springboard, kind of like, but now here we go, and the stock is really breaking out now. And you can go back even further, consolidated. It's been a really nice move here. And if you take this and instead of making a gap, make it it's almost a bull flag, and then I'm breaking out of this consolidation pattern. So you can look for more upside just from a chart perspective here for Netflix. Beautiful pattern here. Gotta like it. Netflix was on the watch list at OptionMillionaires.com, and kudos to everyone there. Priceline as well. I know Jimmy Bob got into some call contracts. Priceline is breaking out. You can see the similar type pattern: consolidation, breakout, consolidation. This is all in an uptrend. Same thing here: consolidation, breakout. Everything is moving up. I mean, look at the SPY. We have a market that's in an uptrend. This just goes back to 2011. But started November of last year, we have Abenomics. We have every central bank in the world printing money. So we're in an uptrend. So any kind of consolidation pattern is going to resolve to the upside, and that's what we're getting, especially with some of the high growth stocks. We have Google being upgraded after hours today by Citigroup. So Google looked for a little bit of upside, and this is what I was talking about, namely this bump up here to this resistance line here that was from November. The Abenomics rally was support. Now resistance, we broke through that today. That's pretty meaningful in my view, and I think that's going to lead possibly to higher prices. What concerned me initially was the fact that since the November lows and we had the Abenomics rally, the Abenomics being the Japanese coming out and deflating their currency. The currency for the Japanese, the yen was at 78 versus the dollar here, and now it's at 102. The Nikkei 225, you can almost correlate it to the Dow Jones Industrial Average point-wise, was at 8,000 here. It's at 14,400, almost 90% higher. Crazy move, okay? Same thing we're having globally. Stocks are up. But the point I was trying to make was we have the case here of each bottom being a V-bottom, 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 okay? See these hits of this support line. Also, we have the 50-day moving average in play, but I could bring that up another time. The point is, this pullback has been a little more cumbersome for the bulls. Okay, it hasn't been like, oh, V-bottom, let's go. No, tried the V-bottom, didn't happen, broke through. We have the V-bottom here. This is what I was looking for. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I brought up in videos. We have the V-bottom coming up, and now we're at a very interesting and important juncture here. Stocks seemingly do not want to give up the gains that we've seen. And look at these candles. I think that more importantly, you can see it's almost like a bull, you know, wild, crazy. It's like, I want to go, and pulled back by the crazy cowboy on top of it. You know, riding it, bucking wild, holding it back. And you can see all of these candles have really long wicks. Some of them to the downside. For the most part, let's just focus on the upside. We've had gaps up. We've had higher moves. Each time pulled back. Even today, we had a nice hammer up until the close. It pulled back. So kind of measured moves, which to me speaks of a market that just feels like it wants to go higher. A market that's kind of being pulled back a little bit. It seems like the central banks have their interns hitting the buy button, but they don't want them hitting the buy button too much. It's kind of like at the end of the day, they're telling the 21-year-old intern, hey, listen, ease off the gas pedal a little bit. Don't hit the buy button so much. We pull back at the end of the day, but guess what happens the next day? We gap higher. We gapped higher today, yesterday. We've had a gap higher every day since the 4th of July. Woo! So anyway, that's what we're looking at. Let's look at some stocks here where I talked about Netflix. Solar City. This is a shout out to Mikey. Mikey's in the chat room every day. He's always on audio. He loves to ring that opening bell. Every morning we have that ding, 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 ding. He's on there, rings the opening bell. And this morning he was talking about Solar City. Had a nice decline and a 10% reversal. Great call by Mikey. He was all over this like flies on some leftover food. And now we got TLT. TLT is the 20-year bond fund. Bonds, I noticed this morning, I talked about it in the chat room and also at stocktwits.com. Everything was up. Bonds, stocks, commodities, gold, the dollar. Everything was up. It was unbelievable. But I think longer term here, we got to look at the picture here for TLT. It's a great trade. It's an ETF that has a lot of liquidity. Look at the options here for TLT. I like the upside here, short term. The 108s are 37 cents. Those could be a really nice return. I really like upside. At least a bounce back up. Okay, we'll pull back here, a trend line down. 109.50 here. Fill this gap. We had this massive gap down on the jobs report. I like it. I like it here. TLT. Yeah, you know me. And let's go to Netflix. I'll just show you the calls. Let's see some of the percentage gains on Netflix. Look at that. The 250s were up 448%. 255s were up 337%. Really nice gain for Netflix. Finally, let's talk about IBM. IBM, the put side, saw the action today. Why? Why? Well, because IBM was downgraded. Goldman Sachs said they don't like IBM here. They don't like it. Where I do like it possibly here is at 187.50. That's a long-term support line. Look at this chart long-term. Beautiful. Okay, we had the lows in November, I believe, of 2008. Hit a low of $65.15. Has rallied ever since. Been a really nice move. Also pays a dividend, which people were liking before interest rates started to rise. We saw bonds started to rise, bond yields started to rise. But beautiful consolidation pattern. Broke above it briefly, tried to break out again. Here we are. Okay, we're in the land where if we don't break up to 210, we're going to see a really dramatic move to the downside. So maybe Goldman Sachs is a little bit ahead of the curve here. Or, if they're not, we're going to see move up to about 208, 210. The options for IBM, what are they telling you? Well, they're not too expensive. We have earnings coming out next week. That's where you'd want to look. Okay, we have the 210 calls are going for 13 cents. That's pretty cheap, in my opinion. Downside protection is actually pretty expensive, and you can see some of the movement we've seen today. 30, 25, 40% moves for the put options. So I think if I had to take my guess for IBM, I think we're going to at least see some sort of support here at the 187.50 range here, and possibly a move up. Could Goldman spectacularly be wrong? Stay tuned. All right, 2PP here from OptionMillionaires.com. Stocks were higher. Some great alerts in the chat room. Jimmy Bob on the watch list. Netflix just going buck wild. The man was behind the stock when it was $50, and now it's at $247. All right, everyone have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow in the chat room. UPP here from OptionMillionaires.com. Goodbye.